There are a number of key networking concepts that we need to understand when we're communicating with our MR5. In order to do this, you need to refer to the networking concepts section of the workbook. Our learning intentions will be to outline the computer networking concepts involved in communicating with a robot over Wi-Fi and LAN. Our success criteria will be able to define a number of key networking terms and outline the basic connection between the MR5 robot and the desktop computer. You'll also be able to connect over VNC, which is covered in the next video in this playlist. So what is a network? Basically, a network is a bunch of computers and other IT devices that are connected together. Networking requires special networking hardware. It also requires special network settings in your operating system and special networking software. We're going to look at a simplified version of communicating between our desktop computer and the MR5 robot. In reality, the connection is most likely more complicated than this, but we don't need to understand the full complexity in order to complete this course, just a simplified version of the connections. If we start over on the left-hand side with our Mac computer, we then connect via a blue or grey networking cable known as a Cat6 cable, which has 8 wires, through an RJ45 connection at the back of the computer, right through, down through the floor, through the conduits in the floor, and up to a cabinet. And that cabinet contains this thing down the bottom, which is like lots of ports, just like the port on the back of the computer, which is called a switch or a hub. The switch or a hub is connected to the main network, which over time is then connected to a WAP or a wireless access point. The wireless access point then connects to the MR5 robot through the Wi-Fi on the Raspberry Pi computer, which is on top of the robot. This networking concept is involved or called a local area network or LAN. The local area network is everything internal on your network, not including the internet. So everything that's connected to our school's network over the Wi-Fi and through the cable system is part of the local area network. A small area or subsection of the local area network is called the wireless LAN or WLAN. And when we connect, it's called MGWLAN. That's the wireless local area network. Our robot requires, in order to communicate, an IP address. The IP address is given to the robot when it logs in on the Wi-Fi. It's 4 numbers separated by full stops, the lowest possible number being a 0, the highest possible number of those numbers being a 255. It's sort of like the address on an envelope. So if you imagine that computers are sending letters to each other and the letters contain data, they put it into an envelope or a packet and they write the address on the front so that the system knows where to send it. The problem is that every time we log in, we might get a different IP address. We don't have the same address every time on computers. So instead, we're going to connect to our MR5 via a host name. A host name is like a name that you give or the IT people give the computer. It registers that name with the network management system against the IP address. So every time the MR5 logs in, its host name gets sent to the main computer. The main computer gives it back an IP address, and that host name and the IP address are linked together. The next time it logs in, it'll be linked to a different number. The MR5 host name is easy to figure out for each robot. It's simply the MR501 in this case, with the hyphen and all in the same line removed. So no hyphen, MR501. Our virtual networking computing or VNC client will be the way that we connect to our MR5. Each MR5 is set up as a VNC server, so it can serve a network computer across our LAN, which basically means that the computer on here, the Raspberry Pi, is controlled by the keyboard, mouse and monitor of the computer or the VNC client. Essentially what it means is that you'll see the operating system of the Raspberry Pi, which looks rather old, but it's still quite good, is controlled on your computer screen of your computer in the Mac Lab. In order to complete this, you need to complete the networking concepts activity from the workbook. You'll need to scan it as one A3 page if you can, or a number of A4 pages if you can't, and Dropbox it to the appropriate Dropbox on the LMS.